Hi, I'm Rob from Picture Mosaics. Thanks for tuning in for a quick introduction and setup of your SketchBot system. This system takes your guest photos, analyzes them by our AI SketchBot software, and draws them for a unique takeaway all in under 60 seconds. And just so you know, there are timestamps below so you can skip to any part of this video at any time if you'd like. So let's jump into the hardware setup. So the basic parts you'll have for your SketchBot system are your laptop, your wireless router, your robots and the corresponding cables, and your bases and platforms. So let's start with the robot. There are two parts here, the main robot and then the pen carriage. It's really easy to slip that in there. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just place it in there till it clicks. If you want to remove it, there's a button right here. You hold that in and pop that right out. On the back of the robot, there are the power port and the USB-C cable ports that we're going to be using. And then your power switch is right on top here, and it'll turn green once it's turned on. So let's get these plugged in actually. So we have our USB-C cable. So it goes from USB-C in the robot, and this cable goes to USB-A. And then your power cable, which is pretty self-explanatory. And we'll get that plugged in. So next we'll set up our bases and platforms. The base comes in two parts. The part with the cutout for the more square shape is for the robot. The longer rectangular shape is for the platforms. And they interlock using this honeycomb design pattern here. So we'll just put those together like so. And then we will get the bot in place. So now there are two types of paper platforms that we use. We have our nanotape platform, which uses, like I said, nanotape that is not a sticky surface, but it uses tiny suction cups to keep smooth surfaces in place. So you can see that paper stays in place for the sketches. That would only do one sketch at a time, perfectly doable. But we also have a spring-loaded platform where the paper slides out from the front here once the sketch is done. And it holds up to 150 pieces of paper at a time. Which you can see from the back here. We can slide the paper right in. And we'll make sure all four corners are tucked under the plastic there. And on the back, you can always check to see how much paper you have left by just giving it a little push. You can see the stack of paper there. There are certain types of paper that don't work well for each of these platforms. The spring-loaded platform works pretty well for all types of paper except for some matte. Matte on matte surfaces tend to cause a little too much friction. It's not as easy to slide out like you're seeing here. Also, the paper needs to be very flat for the spring-loaded platform. If the paper has any sort of curve or bend to it, like if it were stored on a roll, it's not going to work well because it'll get caught in this sliding mechanism. The nanotape platform works well with most papers, but never put a glossy side down on the nanotape. It will get pretty much permanently stuck on there. You'll have to remove the nanotape and replace it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan from Picture Mosaics, and I'll guide you through setting up SketchBot Manager now that our hardware is ready. So, there are a few settings in your laptop we'll need to change first. In your Start menu, we'll search for Ethernet settings. Since we're connected to the router using an Ethernet cable, this is where we're going to tweak some things. Under Network Profile Type, set to a private network. Keep in mind, this next step is only necessary when you're having connectivity issues between your iPads and laptop. You'll open the Configure Firewall and Security settings and make sure that the firewall is turned off on all three of these items. If your connection is solid, no need to worry about this. Now, let's close out those settings and open up the SketchBot Manager. SketchBot Manager will open up in just a few moments. When you first open up the software, you probably won't have photos in here, but for demo purposes, we have some. Let's go ahead and get our bots connected. We'll click the hamburger icon in the top left. we recommend that you power on your bots one at a time to prevent any connectivity issues. The benefit of this is that it allows you to add more paper to the spring-loaded platform, change out the pen, and/or fix a bot while the others continue to actively draw submissions. After you've powered on, click Refresh Bots, so we can see our first bot appear. Now I'll turn on my second bot and click Refresh again. And now I know which bot is which in my SketchBot Manager. So let's go through the individual bot settings. Each row corresponds to each bot with their own set of unique functions. We have our toggle on and off switch for that individual bot. Then the first button being the pen height tool, so you can set your pen in the pen cradle and make sure it's set to the correct height. Now click the home button to send the bot arm back to the home position. This is the wave button, and it helps identify which bot is which in your SketchBot Manager in case you have to make any changes to an individual bot settings. The binding box, once clicked, places a dot at each corner of the sketch area to ensure the sketch area is in a good position. The gear button opens up a window where you can change those offsets. So if you run that binding box settings and you see that it's off center, too high, too much to the left or to the right, you can change those settings here. This test button does the same as that binding box button. You can also set the bot speed. The test shapes button will run the test shapes. You want to make sure that those lines are nice and straight. If you see any jagged or squiggly lines, there are recalibration steps that Rob will cover later in the video, but you could also adjust the speed to help with those squiggly lines too. So we'll close out those settings, and our final item here is the dancing checkbox. If it's checked, the bots will dance. They'll perform their synchronized dancing when they're not actually sketching. If you uncheck it, the bots will remain still. Let's enable our bots. There's a master enable toggle button that will turn on all the bots at once. If at any point you wanted to change the settings for only one bot, but continue sketching with your others, you can switch off individual bots here on the left-hand side. Let's jump over to the general software settings. Here we can set the number of seconds between sketches. Generally 10 to 15 seconds is a good window. We can also output our digital sketches to the digital file folder. This saves PNG versions of your sketches. If you uncheck that, you will not save them out. It'll just be the physical sketches. Smart Auto Crop will crop the photo to be optimized crop for sketching. Here you can also choose your sketch training version. Epsilon is the latest and greatest. We recommend this for more detailed and accurate sketches. Delta is a little bit less detailed, but slightly faster. You can choose which one you like and save. Right next to the general settings is the Portal Project ID. This is a code that you'll get from the SketchBot portal where you can configure digital takeaways, but we'll get into that later on. Let's move on to the On-Site Photos tab. These are photos taken at your event. You can duplicate them using this button at the top left-hand corner of each photo, or scrap them using the trash can button. Let's run a quick duplication so we can show you what that looks like. We see a processing on bot 1. If we jump over to active photos, we see a processing, and once it's turned green, it's actually sketching that photo. And then if you have a queue of photos, you'll see them here. When you duplicate a photo, if you already have a queue set up, duplicating it will send it to the end of that queue. If at any point you want to cancel the photo that's currently being sketched, the X on the top right of a photo being processed that's in the active photos or on-site photos will cancel it immediately. After you've finished your event and you're ready to wrap up, you can archive your project with this folder button. When we click on that folder, it gives us a pop-up where we can archive, access the archive directory, or cancel. It'll clear out all the photos and save it onto our desktop folder, which we'll go through now.
We'll go ahead and click cancel, but be sure to keep SketchBot Manager open and running in the background.
By going into our desktop SketchBot folder, you'll see there are a few folders in here that are important to know about. First, we have the Watch folder. The Watch field is important if you're using a photo capture system that isn't our Mosaic Capture iOS app. This is where photos are dropped and ingested by SketchBot Manager, queuing them to be sketched. The Complete folder is where your actual photos are saved that are taken on site. The Watermark folder is where you can put a G-code for custom sketched logos. Here's the Archive folder I mentioned earlier that holds any archive projects. Your archives are sorted by date. In this example, 6/2024 is June 2024. Lastly, the Digital File folder. This is where your digital sketches are saved if you have that box checked in the general SketchBot settings.
Now I'll pass things over to Rob to talk about capturing photos on Mosaic Capture on your iPad.
So now we've got our software up and running. Let's actually take a photo. We'll start in the selfie kiosk mode. A couple things to note before we jump into the app is You want to make sure your iPad is on the same network as the laptop, which is the router that you're running. And then also in the Wi-Fi settings on the iPad, we'll go to your network settings and turn off private Wi-Fi address. We want to make sure that that Wi-Fi address is public. So now that that is done, let's go into the Mosaic Capture app. So we'll open that up. The home screen will kind of give you a couple different options. We'll click Begin SketchBot Scan, and this is going to look for the network that your laptop is connected to. We can see it appears here, Stealth 40 SketchBot, so we'll click on that, and it opens the camera right up. So a couple things on this screen that we see the silhouette. It's a very rough guide. You don't need to stress that silhouette too much, just kind of a suggestion. Also, it kind of reminds you that really you should only be doing one person at a time. Group shots don't work well. And then also you'll see this pro tip here. We'll get into that in just a moment. So let's actually open up the settings. In the top left-hand corner, there's no icon there, but if you double tap, that'll open up the app settings. We'll go to Configure Camera. And here we can switch between selfie mode with a display countdown, or we can switch to rear-facing camera if we want to do photographer mode. Second, user guides. That's what we were just talking about, the silhouette overlay. You can turn that off completely if you want. You can also turn off that pro tip overlay. And last, the animation options. These are just the on-screen animations that happen when you're waiting to take a photo. You can choose all of them, it'll cycle through, or you can choose just one, or you can turn them all off. So we'll save those settings. And one other thing to mention in the settings, we'll double tap that again, change activation. So if you wanted to switch to a new event, you would just come back to this screen and we'll just go back into the Stealth 40 that we're currently running. So let's take an actual photo. So we'll kind of get a little bit close to the screen. The auto crop will still do a lot of the heavy lifting here. It'll kind of frame my face perfectly for a good sketch. So we'll click Begin, Smile, and then we can review the photo here. We can retake if we want, or if we're okay with it, we'll click Submit, and it'll send it right over to one of the SketchBots to be drawn in just a moment. Now that we've taken a photo in selfie mode, let's switch to photographer mode. So a few things to note on the app. Again, we'll tap in the top left corner to open the settings, and we'll go to Configure Camera and just switch to rear-facing camera and save. And now we're using the photographer mode. So we'll get a picture here. Again, we don't have to follow the silhouette too closely. We can use our fingers to zoom in. So we'll take that photo, 3, 2, 1. Then again, we can review that photo, we can retake it, but we'll send it on through, and it'll start sketching in just a few moments. To send photos from your iPad to your laptop, the typical setup is to use a wireless router to create a local network. Now this router doesn't need internet connection, it's just creating this local network so the iPad can speak to the laptop. This setup is typically reliable in most event situations, but if your event space has 1,000 guests or more, that can really disrupt that wireless connection. So the alternative solution is to hardwire your iPad and your laptop to the router. This can also be a good setup for a stationary photo booth or a selfie stand where you're not going to be moving around with it. It's just going to stay in one spot the whole time. To make this hardwired connection, there's a few extra components you'll need in addition to your regular setup. So you should already have your router. You'll also need 2 Ethernet cables. This is an iPad Ethernet dongle. We prefer this model because it also allows you to connect to a power source, and then an extension cable and an adapter. So these 3 components are using USB-C connection because that's the type of iPad we have here, but they should also be available for Lightning connection as well. So your first step will be to connect the extension cable to your iPad, and then the other end goes to the adapter. Now, some of these adapters can be one directional, so if you have any connectivity issues, just flip that adapter around. And then we connect that to our dongle, and then if we're running power, we can run that from this USB-C connection here to an external battery or even just a regular power source. And the reason for this extension cable is because now we have a nice clean look. That dongle's out of sight. So your next step will be to connect the first Ethernet cable to that dongle, and the other end goes to a numbered port on your router. Then you'll take your second Ethernet cable, connect it to another one of the numbered ports on the router, and then the other end goes to your laptop. Now, if your laptop doesn't have an Ethernet port, you can use a USB to Ethernet adapter, and that should do the trick. So there's a couple more settings we have to tweak on the iPad, so let's jump into that next. In the iPad settings, navigate to Wi-Fi and turn it off. Next, select the Ethernet settings, tap the Ethernet connection, and switch off the toggle for limit IP address tracking. Now that you have your Ethernet hardwired and the settings are tweaked on your iPad, you should be good to go.
Now, let's walk through the SketchBot portal. This is where you can configure data capture, so you can send emails or text to your participants. If you don't have access yet, you can request access here and enter your data. Once you're approved, you should be able to log in. This is the main view of the SketchBot portal, where I have a test project. It shows the portal project ID code, the event's start and end dates, the project name, and when it was created. Let's create a new project here. So, first, the project ID right here. It's used to enter in the SketchBot Manager program settings. That connects the project that you're taking photos for with this portal project. Next, we'll give it a name. Let's do Test Project 2. And we'll give it a date range. When selecting a range, be sure to set the start date to be one or multiple days prior to the event's starting date. This gives you the time you need to test out the portal's various functions. If you have an entire month of a single event that's happening only on the weekends, you'd want to select the entire month so you have all those dates covered. You don't have to set it to interval dates or set up different projects. You can just use this one project for that full date range. So we'll click Apply and the dates are saved. This Download Data button is used after your event. Once you've collected all the data, the event is finished, and you've sent out all your emails, you can click this and it'll download a spreadsheet of all that user data. This can be downloaded at the end of the event or anytime during the event if you wanted to pull that data ahead of time. Speaking of data, we can configure our data capture here on this first item. You just click which fields you want, and for this we'll do first name, last name, email, and then we'll also add a custom data field. We can click that custom one and change it to company. Say it's a sales retreat and you want to find out where these people are coming from. That's where you would use that custom field. If you want any of these fields to be mandatory, just click that field again to highlight it in pink. The text in these data fields is what will appear in that user flow as they're entering their data. Here, you can see more info on inserting links and the terms and conditions. If you want to use a link, they need to be uploaded as an HTML file. To add a link to the copy within any of the check fields, add the brackets around the copy. You're able to upload your own terms and conditions within the T&Cs field if you have it selected. If you don't have one, you can find a template here. You can also click this drop-down button and then enter Company 1, Company 2, and Company 3. Now, those people will be presented with 3 options from a drop-down menu. You can also change the order of these data fields as well. Now we can click Save. Next step is sending emails or text messages to these users after you've captured their data. First, we'll go through the emails. Here you can download a template of that shared email to see what the standard layout looks like, and then you can upload your own assets, like your header image at the top, footer image at the bottom, and custom text within each of these fields. Your share image is going to appear in the middle, which we'll get to in just a moment. You can also enable different social sharing platforms here as well. There are some tips on the right for customizing your email text, whether it's line breaks, bold, underline, or adding hyperlinks. You can also send a test email to yourself to make sure everything's looking good before you actually send anything out officially. Once you're ready to go, you can click that Save button. Make sure you click Activate, and that way you know those emails are going to be sent. If you click Deactivate, you don't want those emails to send just yet. You can keep that deactivated. The other option is text messages, where you can add some custom text. The link for that user-specific share page is going to be added automatically. You won't have to worry about that. And remember, if you want text message takeaways, you'll need to select the phone number field within the data capture section above. Then, if you know the region where you're going to be sending these text messages, you can select here. Or if you want to cover all your bases, just enable all. Again, click Save and then Activate to make sure the texts actually send. We'll deactivate that for now and move on to the next item, which is the share image as well as the share page. So the share image, like we were mentioning in the email, is this image, which will become the user's sketch image. You can add some extra content to it too, whether it's an overlay logo or overlay text. Overlays can be placed over a square image like a frame, or used as a header or footer for our rectangular options. Make sure you select which one you want to use and upload your PNG file for that overlay. Clicking Save and Next will take you to the share page options. And this is when that user gets that email or that text message, they click on that link, it takes them to a share page where they can see this custom copy that you've entered, and they can download their sketch image or share it on social networks. There's a lot of customization here. You can change the background color, the text color, you can add a header image, again, a custom copy, sharing options, and then if the sharing options are active, you can customize the share page title, the description, the Twitter pre-filled copy, and you can customize the font too. You can view an example share page once you've entered your data and your info, so you can see what it looks like before you start sending it, and then click Save. Next, we have the iOS app editor, where there are even more customization options that will change the look and behavior of the Mosaic Capture iOS app. You can customize the text within various buttons, enable a skip option, and change the font used as well as the color scheme for the background of the app. Once that's set to your liking, you're good to go. Last but not least, you can access your portal settings using the gear icon here. In these settings, you can change your password, view and renew your license key, and view credits. Let's move into how to recalibrate your bots.
Now, keep in mind, you're only going to want to do this if your bot is acting strangely and you have not been able to solve the issue using the standard fixes. First, in SketchBot Manager, ensure your bot is powered on and connected to your laptop. Remove the pen holder. In the software, navigate to the hamburger icon, find your bot, and click the blue gear. Then, you'll click the red Recalibrate button. Click Recalibrate in the pop-up window, and the bot's internal gears will unlock, allowing you to move it freely. Center the bot arm as perfectly as you can. Then, while keeping it centered, raise the arm fully, and push it back as far as it can go. Then click Done. The bot arm will lower itself and return to the home position. Reinstall the pen holder, and run through the pen loading procedure and binding box calibration. Adjust your offsets accordingly, and once finished, you're ready to start sketching with your recalibrated bot.
So that about wraps up the SketchBot tutorial. A few final tips for you. Always keep the laptop plugged into power. Again, if you don't have it plugged in and the battery starts getting low, the SketchBot Manager will give you a warning, but you do not ever want your laptop to totally lose battery life while running the SketchBot system. So it's best to just leave it plugged into power at all times. If your pens are ever drawing lines that are too thick or too thin, you can always check that pen height by using the pen height button in the individual bot settings. You can also check the pen carriage, make sure that it's functioning properly. Nanotape platforms, if you're using these, every now and then it's good to wash the nanotape surface with warm water and dish soap. Not a whole lot of effort, it just keeps it nice and clean, that way it keeps that paper in place. And last, lighting. Lighting is very important. Optimal lighting will give the best photos for the best sketches. We like to use these Lumilights for our iPads. They're compact, they're subtle, low profile, but they work great, has great lighting, a lot of different lighting adjustments and settings. And we have a video on using that as well. So good luck, and if you have any questions, reach out. Thanks.